Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Functionally Literate.
I am Ryan,
And I'm Zach.
and today we're discussing Chinese mythology.
I don't know why I opened it weird like that, but I liked it.
You know,
I hope they appreciate the variety.
I think that when we are doing this, we should always seek to have a little bit of variety. Otherwise, we'll get bored. And
Sorry if that was weird, guys.
And as we've discovered, as we've discussed in our last episodes about Buddhism, it's very important to stave off boredom. I don't know if that was the lesson Buddhism had. I think actually the lesson they had was boredom will eventually come.
Yeah, boredom is inevitable.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. And actually, your craving of entertainment
is the
bad.
problem.
Get rid of that.
Shit.
We've learned nothing. Sorry, Buddhists. We're the same idiots we've always been.
Fuck. So yeah, this week we're discussing Chinese mythology.
Moving on to China.
I want to give credit to Digistory Productions for making this possible. I want to give credit to VidWest for letting us use their space.
Thanks, VidWest.
And they also made this possible.
They did.
Digistory provides some of the equipment we're using. VidWest provides some of the equipment we're using.
It's really not for us to figure out.
Thank you to Chris, our sound guy, for setting this all up and
Thank you,
currently actively recording our stuff. And thank you to Jake Weller for our intro and outro music.
Thanks, Jake. You're so good at that. That's
so great.
Stupid good.
If you like Jake's intro and outro, be sure to listen to Wasting Time. That is where the inspiration for our intro and outro came from.
It's very good.
Yeah.
You know, I always forget who does all the editing and stuff. It just shows
man.
up.
That's me. I do that.
Oh, hey, thanks, man.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it just shows up on my phone. I'm like, oh, look at this.
Look at this. Someone
It's
made
just
that.
done. Yeah, it's super easy.
It's just stuff that...
I don't know why more people don't do this.
Yeah.
So easy.
So easy. Everybody has a podcast except you.
That's right. Pretty good book.
It is a pretty good book.
It was a pretty good book. I like it.
Sidebar. We are in the VidWest space, which means that it's not as private as usual. Unfortunately, there are other people in the space.
It's a
If you
communal
hear weird-
area.
If you hear weird stuff in the background, sorry about that.
There are some very nice people doing a photo shoot.
There are some very nice people doing a photo shoot. They look quite nice.
They do.
Anyways, Chinese mythology. So we are both reading from the same book today. All the stories that we are discussing are coming from Chinese myths and folktales. This is a Barnes and Noble original. It is the collections of a few different texts that were from, what's the word I'm looking for? Public domain. This is all public domain stuff.
Yeah.
So it all came from a time that would be considered the public domain now. Strange stories from a Chinese studio.
Mm-hmm. Those are all very good.
Chinese folktales and Chinese fairy tales. Also, tales of saints and magicians, ghost stories, historic legends. So yeah, that's what we've got. One of my stories is gonna come from the Strange Tales from a Chinese studio, and also I believe historic legends. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So I will be telling the story of Guan Yu.
Yep.
God of War.
That's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. I'm gonna be talking about a funny story about a necromancer called Magical Arts, and I'm also gonna talk about the Immortal Eight. I have a couple stories about the Immortal Eight.
The Immortal Eight are fun. I like that.
Yeah.
I think what's his name? Is it Lee with the iron crutch?
Yeah.
I like Lee.
Lee with
Lee's
the iron
dope.
crutch.
Lee's good.
Yeah.
That was my favorite of the 8 Immortals.
Yeah. So you start this off.
Okay, we'll start with old Guan Yu. He's God of War, also known as Guan Di, also called by his friends Duke Fairbeard.
Duke Fairbeard.
He has a very nice beard. It's very fair. At some point, even the Emperor gives him a little silk pouch in which to put his beard. So a lot of times you'll see like idols of Guan Yu have him with his beard in a little pouch. He'll have like almost like a little bag on his chin. That's his beard tied up in his nice silk pouch.
That reminds me of those like knitted containers that they have on like Instagram or Pinterest.
Yeah.
That's what
I always imagine just like a smaller Crown Royal bag. That one drawstring bag everybody has.
A little purple Crown Royal, but small. Real small.
Just a little one. It was for a Crown Royal shooter. It's a fashion choice.
So Fairbeard.
Duke Fairbeard. He's not just the god of war. He's also the god of brotherhood, wealth, justice, and protection. I think he's commonly revered by merchants.
Okay.
Which will become clear in the story. He rode a red horse.
Mm-hmm.
His face was red.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times in like plays and stuff, you'll also see that he's got bright red face. Not just like, and I don't mean like he's blushing. I mean his face is candy apple red. He converts to Buddhism after his death, as most Chinese gods tend to do. But he was revered in Taoism and Confucianism.
So, yeah, I should mention there. So it's pretty common in Chinese mythology when people die, typically they then ascend to godhood and they're given a... So in Chinese mythology, there's a whole godly administration.
Yes.
And so usually when you die and you're ascended to godhood, that title comes with a job.
Yes, you are required to work.
Yeah.
And that's generally just, like the Joseph Campbell thing where the religion and the cosmology justifies the social. The argument there is that the social mirrors the cosmic, right? Because if that's what heaven looks like, then obviously that's perfect, and we should try to do that here too, and that's what Earth looks like. And so their heaven is this big bureaucratic administrative state.
And that's where Confucianism comes in, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why in China, obviously the ideal is a big bureaucratic administrative state. It just makes sense. If that's what heaven's like, why wouldn't it be the same here?
Are we sure that's heaven?
It is to them. So, the story of Guan Yu starts during the rebellion of the Yellow Turbans.
All right.
I don't know what that is. I have no historical frame of reference for that. It seemed to have been a pretty widespread conflict.
Let's assume before Christ.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. BC or BCE.
Before Christ era.
He had actually left home to join the military and was turned away.
Why?
I don't remember the specifics of why. He was just told he couldn't join. So he was kind of dejected. He was on his way back home. He meets a guy named Chang Fei. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. It's like Shang or Chang or whatever. It's Dschang Fei. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I feel like it's safe to assume that D is silent.
Yeah, so Chang Fei. And they sort of travel together for a little bit. He's like, wow, you seem really down. And he tells him, I tried to join the military, but they wouldn't let me. So he just kind of shares his complaints. He tried to join the military, but they didn't let him. And he's bummed out. And now he's heading home. And Chang Fei was like, well, I know a guy. You should meet him. He's pretty rad. So he takes him to meet a man named Liu Bei, who you will find out later is the rightful emperor.
Oh, shit.
And these three make a pact of brotherhood. They go to a peach orchard and sacrifice a white steed.
What?
To sanctify their pact.
Why are they doing that? What? Wait, it's a horse, though. You don't...
That's right. They sacrifice a horse.
Okay.
It's not uncommon. The most common sacrificial animals are bulls, horses, and pigs. Those are the three that are most often used as sacrifices.
Horses, and pigs.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see a lot of that. So they make this pact of brotherhood, like no matter what happens, we are each other's brothers. We will look out for each other.
Lovely.
Now, Liu Bei is like the leader of one of these factions in this war, this rebellion of the Yellow Turbans. One of the other leaders is a man named Cao Cao.
Cao
Cao.
We should not make fun, but...
I'm not making fun of it. I just like... It's fun to say.
Cao.
Cao. It's fun to say. It's a cool name. he incites the enemies of the emperor, Liu Bei, to take a city that assumably is under their control. And Guan Yu's like, well, fuck, I gotta go help. That's my brother, right? We just made this pact.
So
he rushes off to help him. He gets ambushed. It was all a trap. They just wanted Guan Yu. And gets captured along with his son, Guan Ping. So they catch them both. His captor tends to persuade him, to switch sides. But it doesn't work. He's like, nah, I'm not going to switch sides. Now, there's this longer version of it where he gets captured by one guy, and he's like, hey, join my side. And he goes, no, I'm not going to join your side. But, like, Liu Bei was in the ambush. He's like, well, maybe Liu Bei's dead. So, like, I'll be on your side until I figure out what happened to Liu Bei, and then I'm out. I'm back with him as soon as I figure it out. The guy was like, yeah, sure. And then he leaves, and he's upset, and he's like, ah.
Guan Yu's trying to be as ethical as possible here.
Right. And so then he gets captured again by Cao Cao with his son. Cao Cao's also like, change sides. And Guan Yu's like, no.
No.
I'm not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that.
I've already sworn to Liu Bei, and he's alive, so no. And so...
Liu Bei's my bro.
That's right. And so to punish him, he's like, well, I'll kill your son. And he goes, I mean, fuck it. I'm still not switching sides. So he decapitates his son. He's like, now switch sides. He goes, you just killed my son. Why would I do that? That's so stupid. And so then they decapitate Guan Yu. So they punish him for it.
Yeah.
Now, Guan Yu has a castle because he's a lord at this point. I mean, he's best friends with the rightful emperor. He's got money. He's got influence. He's got an army. His captain, Chao Tsang, was at this keep with his other men and some followers, including his red horse, his very famous horse, all of whom die when they find out that Guan Yu has been killed.
Yeah, it was like thousands of people.
Yeah.
It was like an arrow was
they just die.
In their heart.
Yeah, they die of grief. His horse actually just wanders off a cliff because horses can't commit suicide. They can't, just like cut their own throat or anything like that. He's a horse. So the horse just runs off a cliff, kills himself.
Like a lemming.
Right.
Oh,
so everybody's super sad.
Side note, lemmings don't actually jump off cliffs and kill themselves.
They do if you chase them.
Yeah, that's what Disney did. Disney chased a bunch of lemmings off a cliff for a nature documentary. It's tragic.
Yeah, and why put that in the nature documentary if it's not real?
I don't know.
It doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. But anyway. Not the point. The red horse did, in fact, lemming himself, even though that's a sort of misnamed phenomenon. Now, this is where he gets sort of incorporated into Buddhism. Later, he will appear as a ghost to a Buddhist monk in the hills of the Jade Fountain, which is a very important spot in China, demanding his head. So what they had done when they killed Guan Yu is they didn't bury his body and his head together, because that would have been too honorable. They wanted to piss everybody off, so they shipped his body back to his family, but they kept his head.
What'd they do with it?
And they took his head, and they buried it under the lintel of the palace of Cao Cao, so that every time he went in and out of his home, he would step on Guan Yu's head.
What the
Just to continuously disrespect him. Super fucked up.
Just buried under the steps to the front entrance.
Yeah. So that everyone that came in would step on Guan Yu's head.
That is next level disrespect.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
That's creative.
And Guan Yu was a loved man. Like, in the cities that he had lorded over, he was very strict on crime, which made him very popular with merchants, which is why he's also the god of wealth.
Well, that would be a popular move with the merchants.
Yeah. I mean, if you were caught stealing, it was like capital punishment. It's like, no, you don't steal.
Jesus.
And so it's even fairly common today for stores in China to have little pictures of Guan Yu in them as a sign of protection.
Makes sense. A little charm.
Yeah. So he appears as this ghost to this Buddhist monk in the hills of the Jade Fountain, demanding his head. He's like, I want my head back. And the monk, in typical Buddhist fashion, says, yeah, but you killed a lot of people. Like, you were a general in a war of like 5 different factions.
Just so many people dead.
There's a lot of people that don't have their heads. because of you. So it'd be very unfair for you to be so upset about it now and to get what you want when these men that you've killed by decapitation, that don't have their heads, can't ask for their head back and definitely won't get it. That's pretty fucked up. And at that moment, Guan Yu attains enlightenment, converts to Buddhism, and is like, oh, you're right. I'm obviously in the wrong here. Now
I must root out my greed.
Right. He needs to see his own flaws there and go, my desire is at the root of this, and I need to just rip that out.
Right.
So he is enlightened, he accepts Buddha, and he becomes the immortal master of war. Now, he's seen oftentimes as a sort of the opposite side of the coin of Confucius, where Confucius is the master of politics, which is the art of getting along, and he is the immortal master of war, which is what happens when you don't get along. And so it's like, you try the Confucius way, and if that doesn't work, we'll flip that coin, we'll go the Guan Yu route.
Damn.
So that's the story of Guan Yu. Today, he's actually still more revered than Confucius is.
Really?
Yeah. So I looked it up. Confucius, to this day, has about 30,000 active temples and shrines.
Okay.
That's quite a few. But China's a big place. It's massive. Guan Yu has over 300,000.
Jesus.
So he has 10 times the number of temples and shrines. There's an entire city in China. I don't know if China would consider a city. Maybe they consider it a town. It's small, but it's a big place. All of people that claim to be descendants of Guan Yu. They've got a tower built to him. There's a shrine and a temple in there. And they have this logbook that's supposed to be like this genealogical record where it's like it shows how every single one of them is linked back to Guan Yu. So this is very much still like a known, respected, and revered deific figure or historical figure, at least, in China.
Unrelated. But you got me thinking about genealogical logbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, I'm a direct descendant of one of the people that rode over on the Mayflower.
That's pretty cool.
I say supposedly because my grandmother was a member of this women's group.
Mm-hmm.
You could only be a member if they could verify that you were a direct descendant from the Mayflower. So I'm a man.
Yeah.
I don't know what this group is, but I remember my grandmother bragging about it. So therefore, I am also a direct descendant. It took me a while to make that leap of logic, like, oh, she's a direct descendant, so therefore I am.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend about it, and it's like, man, I wish I could verify that. And it's like, what do you mean? Why would you? Your grandmother is.
Yeah.
You're her grandson.
Yeah.
Obviously,
if she's recognized as verified, then all you have to do is show birth certificates. Like, look.
And it's like,
yeah.
I don't need to do that. It's good enough. The knowledge is all I need.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I have no idea when my family immigrated.
Yeah.
On I think my grandma's side, the farthest back we could trace it is to a Canadian man named Amos Colby.
Okay.
And I think he came into the United States sometime in the 18 teens.
Interesting.
And settled in Kansas. That's all I got.
That's all you got?
That's it.
It's all right.
It's pretty unexciting.
Some people don't even have that.
That's true.
So the story that I have, the first story that I have that I want to tell, it's really amusing. It's why I wanted to tell it. It's called Magical Arts. So there's this guy, Mr. Yu, Y-U, with like an umlaut above the U. So Mr. Yu, he, I believe he was a merchant, and he was a pretty well-to-do man. He was rich enough to have a servant. His servant got sick, and in this time, if you had a servant, you were responsible for your servant's well-being. So he was like, oh shit, well, okay, I guess I better call on the local necromancer to solve this problem.
Yes.
Like you do.
As one does, yeah. That's what I do. Anytime I got a problem, I call my younger brother. Hey, I need your help.
Does he play a necromancer in your campaign?
Religiously. Every campaign he's ever played in, wizard, necromancy school. That's all he wants to play.
Seriously?
Yes.
Different characters?
The only time, yeah. But the only time he's played not that was when he played a character from the backstory of one of those necromancers. Where he was like, because part of his story was that his older brother had died, and that's what got him into necromancy, because he idolized his older brother.
Okay.
I'm trying not to read into that Freudian. I'm like, are you saying you wish I was dead? But so he played in a very short campaign the dead older brother. So that campaign was going to be like the story of his life and then him dying.
Oh, okay.
So he made that character to kill it at the end.
Right.
The only non-necromancer character he ever played. He's like, I want him dead by the end of this campaign.
Damn. Okay.
Like, you got a fixation there, guy.
Never branches out.
No.
And see, meanwhile, my wife is like, listen, I'm tired of you playing warlocks. You got to branch out. I'm tired. Like, listen, be something else. He's like, all right, fine.
The warlocks are so fun.
Warlocks are so fun. Do the thing, Bart.
Eldritch Blast.
Anyways, Mr. Yu, he calls on a necromancer. This necromancer comes to his house, looks over his servant, says to Mr. Yu, your servant's gonna be fine. You, though, you're gonna die in 3 days. And he's like, well, shit. Fuck. I'm gonna die in 3 days, has a little bit of an existential crisis.
Well, yeah, someone's like, I'm actually pretty sure you're gonna die. You're like, oh, well, I have things I need to take care of. This is a problem.
Yeah, and so, but the necromancer says all is not lost. Says to him, I have a charm I can give you that will save your life. You just gotta give me all this money in exchange for it. And Mr. Yu refuses, because he's like, you can't change fate. If I am fated to die, I will face my death.
Right.
And so he spends the next 3 days, he turns the necromancer away. He spends the next 3 days making arrangements, saying his final goodbyes, making sure his will is all up to snuff the way he wants it. The third day, that night, he kneels in his home, in the family room, and he has his sword with him, and he waits. He's not ill.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how he's going to die, but he can guess.
Yeah. It's like, well, I mean, unless there's some tragic accident in my sleep, but like, I'm just gonna. Well, and I would say that's the brave thing to do. If you know you're gonna die, meet death head on.
Yeah. So, he's waiting, and he hears something at the window, some weird scratching. He can't quite identify what it is. It's dark. He turns, looks at the window, and he sees this tiny man. Just this tiny man at the window. Leaps at him. The little man has his own little sword. The man is made of paper. Yeah. And so, he fights this little paper man. Dude's cutting him up, and he gets a lucky slice and cuts the paper man in half.
Oh, man. I'm imagining that scene from Princess Bride.
Yeah? Which one?
With Wesley and Inigo.
Okay.
Fencing back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Their little dialogue, but just with a tiny little paper guy. Instead of Wesley.
Oh, my goodness.
That'd be awesome.
So,
I want that scene. I want to see it.
So the night continues. He stays awake. He's fated to die.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, he's certain that something is going to continue to try to kill him. He's then attacked by a hobgoblin.
First paper guy. Now a hobgoblin.
A hobgoblin. Yeah.
Now, is this hobgoblin? Is it small? Is it normal sized? What's the stature of a hobgoblin?
It doesn't specify, but if I'm going by D&D rules, it's small.
Okay.
It's not a paper man small.
No, it's a little bit bigger than a paper man.
Yeah, so this hobgoblin attacks him. He defeats the hobgoblin. The hobgoblin busted his door down, though, so he's pretty exposed.
Wow, rude.
Yeah, it's raining. And then in through the rain, there's a devil. Devil attacks him.
Jeez.
And he has
this guy's having a rough night. I can see why the Necromancer thought he was going to die.
He has this full-on, just drag-out fight with the devil. And when he defeats it, he doesn't kill the devil. He interrogates the devil. He's like, "Who sent you?"
Yeah.
The Necromancer. It was the Necromancer.
Son of a bitch.
So the next morning, he hands the devil over to the authorities, and he tells them, "I hired a necromancer. That necromancer said I was fated to die in 3 days unless I bought a charm from him. I did not buy the charm from him. I was attacked by 3 assassins. This one says the necromancer hired him." So the authorities take this very seriously.
Yeah. Well, you're handed a devil.
Yeah.
In that crazy story. And you go, well, maybe I wouldn't believe it, but he did just hand us a devil. I'm inclined to believe him now.
So they go find the necromancer and they interrogate him. They discover the truth of the matter, which is, as Mr. Yu foretold, they put the necromancer to death. That's the end of that story.
That is ironic. I love the irony of that.
Just the idea of this necromancer just trying to swindle people, like, you're gonna die. Yeah. I'm gonna make it happen.
Well, but he knew that this would have been a good target for it because, 1, he had a servant.
Yeah.
All right. That implies some wealth. And 2, he had a servant he was willing to pay a doctor or necromancer to come heal. That's probably not cheap.
Mm-mm.
So he's like, oh, this guy, I bet you if I scare him enough, I can get a lot of money out of him.
Mm-hmm.
But, a little foreshadowed a little bit by the fact that he was willing to pay someone to fix his servant.
Yeah.
Because, if he was a bad person, he would just let the servant die, get a new servant.
Well, there's this sense of obligation in Chinese culture,
right,
when it comes to that kind of thing. Like, if you have a family, if you have servants, employees rather, you've got to take care of them.
Yeah. And so, but that extends like it foreshadows him as a righteous man.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when the necromancer tries to swindle him, he goes, well, I can save you from dying.
He's like, no, you can't.
He's like, fate. No, the righteous thing to do is to just die. Like, if that's going to be what it is, if that's the way, that's the way. That's the Tao. Let's do it. And then it further exerts his righteousness in that, like, there's 3 varying levels of evil that assault him at night.
Yeah.
And he beats them all.
Yeah.
So, and even at the end, he doesn't kill the devil, even though he absolutely would be within his rights to do. He hands him over alive to the authorities. He said, no, I'm going to submit this to the proper authority, not my own.
Yep.
And he could have taken revenge on the necromancer, but he didn't. He let the law do that.
He would have been
a stand-up Chinese citizen.
I feel like he would have been in his rights to have just busted down the necromancer's door and killed him.
That's right. But he proves that he's a better man than average for not.
He's like, nah, I'm going to turn in this devil.
He is showing that he is sort of the epitome of the Chinese man.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick ad break, and we will be back with the stories of the Immortal Eight. Hi, this is Functionally Literate. Hope you've been enjoying listening. This episode is brought to you by me. I made this show. I'm Ryan. I'm broke. If you could donate a little money my way with a sponsorship or a product, I'll be a shill for money. And I'm going to use that money with which to buy books. Because let me tell you, right now I'm checking stuff out of the library, and it's rough. You can email me at funk.lit.pod@gmail.com. That is FUNC.lit.pod Lit.pod@gmail.com. You could also be a patron of this podcast. That's right. This podcast, Functionally Literate, we're going places. We have a Patreon now. You can give me $1, and in exchange, you will be able to listen to this podcast ad-free. That means right now, you don't have to listen to this bit. You can listen to the podcast uninterrupted. It just goes without me going on about things that you don't care about. Just for $1. And that will increase in value every 2 weeks because there will be another ad-free episode. Additionally, if you'd like to just pitch a little money my way, like you're not interested in being a patron, you can go to my PayPal, which is also in there. I made a Funklit PayPal. It'll all be in the description. All the links in the description. Hope you enjoyed that ad. Zach went to go to a confirmation and he has returned.
I have returned. They have been confirmed. They are existing.
So, where were we?
We were about to do the 8 Immortals.
The Immortal Eight, that's right. So, this is where I'm going to come clean with the audience about the nature of this episode. We did this before.
Yes. We have discussed Chinese myths once before now.
And I feel like it was so much better.
It was a while ago.
It was a while ago, and I don't remember it.
Yeah, the thing is, it was fresh. It was
not
fresh
so
in our minds.
But I did take pretty decent notes.
I feel more prepared to talk about it now.
I feel that in a little bit, too. That's why I wanted, the way we're currently doing it, the lineup currently is Hinduism, Buddhism, Chinese, Japanese. Mm-hmm. Before, it was Chinese, Japanese, Chinese, Japanese, Hinduism, Buddhism.
Yeah. No, this order makes more sense, I think. Start with India.
But it came from a place of ignorance. We didn't realize we should have started with India. It wasn't until we started reading about Chinese and Japanese initially.
And then everything was like, oh yeah, Buddhism too. And we're like, well, shit. We should have read Buddhism first. That's our bad, India. We took for granted your influence
on the Eastern world.
So yeah, that's our bad. Chandragupta's a G.
We acknowledge it now. We get a little more functionally literate every time we do this.
It's not a plug. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
So 8 Immortals.
They're people who attained the hidden wisdom, which now I understand to mean enlightenment. They became enlightened.
That's right.
And became gods because they were enlightened.
Something like that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
And it explains at the time, because the first time we did this, you'll recall, I asked you, what do you think the hidden wisdom is? What do you think is the answer to attaining the hidden wisdom?
And I didn't know.
And what I didn't realize I was asking was, how do I become enlightened?
Yeah.
Because when you become enlightened, you become immortal. Because you become a god when you die. In Chinese culture, that is how they interpreted Buddhism.
That's right.
Or at least when it comes to the Immortal Eight.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was interpreted a lot of different ways. Yeah. But the reason why I even have this in here is because, I have to tell a story that was lost. Because I told the story of my experience with Chinese mythology, my attempt to cover this.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was?
Not exactly.
So I started my new job at the high school, and I discovered that I have an employee ID number that I can use to check out books from the high school public library.
That's right.
That's a benefit I have. Now, that said, all the books are gauged towards high school kids.
Yeah.
There was one that they should get rid of. It was about Egypt. Anyways, they didn't have anything about China that was no good. It was, for me, no good. That was my first attempt. Second attempt was the library. Library was also not super helpful. So I got what was essentially a textbook.
Mhm.
And it's no good. Just no good. And so then finally, out of desperation, I was like, can I borrow your book?
I do remember that, yeah.
Which I've not needed to do before or since.
Yeah.
Just none of the libraries that I tried helped me.
It's weird that would be the hard thing to find.
Yeah. Well, because, I mean, what the library did have wasn't what I was looking for. Because now I understand what we're looking for. We're looking for things that view it from the mythological and narrative perspective, which, as it turns out, there's not a lot of that outside of the classical mythologies.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, come on, society, do I have to produce this product?
It would take a very long time to do so well.
As it turns out, that's what Functionally Literate does sometimes.
Apparently.
So hopefully society appreciates that. Anyways, so the other thing was, the Eight Immortals. I was going somewhere with this. Oh yeah, the thing I read in the Chinese textbook that I did see, and why I wanted to focus on the Eight Immortals, it was because they talked about foxes and incubus and succubi and like weird beliefs when it came to sex.
Yeah.
That I just felt like I had to mention. So in Chinese culture, it was believed, and it was a Taoist or like yin yang thing.
Mm-hmm.
What was he? Sorry, remind me what's up with yin yang?
That we can get real deep on what yin
Not
yang
deep,
is.
just real brief as a reference.
Yin is the feminine, yang is the masculine principle. There's, good and evil. It's really just a symbol of duality itself. And then Tao, the way, is the line between the two.
Right. And so there was a balance of energy thing to do with sex. So if, regardless of which party you are, the male or female party, when you have sex, whoever comes first is taking energy from the other. That's how you get succubi and stuff. Then there's also foxes, which are shape-changing spiritual foxes that often turn into beautiful women.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was common, I guess, in ancient Chinese culture to accuse women of being foxes or devils.
Only if they were hot and had a high sex drive.
And wanted to marry someone well-to-do.
Yeah.
Well-to-do.
How dare they?
Correct me if I'm wrong if you're Chinese, but that is how I've interpreted what I've read. And it came from your culture, so that's not it's not a racist thing. That's a thing that Americans are really sensitive about, especially if they're white, in case you're international.
Yeah.
We have international
real touchy about racism.
The Eight Immortals. That's why, because that was the transition. The page that was talking about the Eight Immortals was like, so yeah, there's that. And then they start talking about the Eight Immortals who don't do that.
Yeah.
It's like, why'd you even bring it up then?
Here are these guys that come at the same time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Because the other idea that you could do with this is you could just have sex and be a selfish lover with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? Because the earlier you come before them, the more life energy you steal.
That's right.
So the idea was if you didn't want to steal any life energy, you tried to come at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. We're prudes. Americans are prudes.
This is now a sex podcast.
And again, it was saying the Eight Immortals don't do that. The Eight Immortals, people who attained the hidden wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Enlightenment. So their leader was Sheng Li Quan. He discovered the Philosopher's Stone, also known as the Golden Cinnabar, which I looked that up. That is the ore from which mercury is derived.
It is.
You want cinnabar to get mercury, which I don't want. But
No, but having the good old Quicksilver was a valuable thing.
So with his Philosopher's Stone, he could turn Quicksilver to gold and lead to silver.
That's pretty good.
So therefore, he attained the hidden wisdom. Then you've got old Shango. He attained immortality in primal times. He owned a white mule that could go 1,000 miles a day and could be folded up and stored in a trunk. He inflated the mule when he needed it by sprinkling upon it water from his mouth.
Just spitting on his mule. See, this is a thing I didn't understand, though. Is he spitting on it? Or is he putting water in his mouth and then, like, spraying it on it?
Right.
I mean, technically, either way is spitting on it, but I just don't know. Is saliva the actual ingredient, or is it water?
We discussed how this is just a common thing. Water is life. Like,
yeah,
you're bringing life to the folded up mule.
Mm-hmm.
Water it.
Like the mule plant.
Like a mule plant. Third person was Lu Wan, or Lu Dungbin, which means the mountain guest, or guest of the rock. The book that I read about him referred to him a lot as guest of the rock.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Li. So it's all those names, but then, like, his name was Li.
Yeah.
Li. But the Empress Wu attempted to eradicate his family, so he and his immediate family changed his name. He wielded a flying sword. Kind of like Mjolnir. Zach had to yawn.
I wonder, what did he do that the Empress was like, get rid of all of them? See, this is the thing.
There's a lot of history I don't know.
Yeah, this is the thing I struggled with the Chinese mythology specifically, is that there's so little detail in things that I specifically am interested in.
Yeah.
What did he do to the Empress? Where the fuck did that sword come from?
I don't know.
And why does it fly?
I don't know.
I want to know those things. Where did he get the mule?
Lu Wan?
Yeah, where'd the mule come from?
No, wait, no, that wasn't Lu Wan. That was old Shango. Where did he get the mule? I don't know.
It's those things that I'm like, I want to know.
Where did Lu Wan get his flying sword? I don't know.
And they just don't tell you.
Then we've got Cao Guogui. That's the uncle of the state. That was his nickname. He was the younger brother of Empress Cao, hence the nickname.
Mm-hmm.
From a very young age, he was obsessed and in love with attaining the hidden wisdom. He didn't care about anything else. Zheng Li Quan, the leader, helped him attain immortality. So because he was obsessed with it, this guy was like, all right.
Yeah, I'll help you out.
I'll help you with that.
If only it were that easy.
Fourth one we've got is Lan Sai Ho. Nothing is known of his true name, his time, nor his family. He was often seen in the marketplace, clad in a torn blue robe, and wearing only a single shoe, beating a block of wood, and singing the nothingness of life. That is the passage that I quoted. That's all they said about him.
That's a trickster figure right there. That's chaos incarnate. That's who that is. He's just the shit we don't understand about everything.
Number 6, Li Tiaguai, or Li with the Iron Crutch.
Yeah, this guy's awesome.
So he was an orphan.
Yep.
He was raised by his older brother and his older... He was raised by his older brother and his sister-in-law.
Yep.
He was treated poorly by his sister-in-law, so he ran away to the hills where he attained the hidden wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember why he has the iron crutch?
I have the story right here.
Oh, yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
I love that story.
So he had the ability to not burn as long as nobody questioned it.
That's right.
So it's a very niche power. He set his leg on fire to cook some food.
Yeah, they were out of food.
His brother and his sister-in-law and him, they were out of food. So he set his leg on fire to cook some food, and he told his family, he told them both, like, don't question it.
Don't ask.
Don't ask.
Just let it happen.
His sister-in-law questioned it. He was so pissed about it. He was like, if you'd said nothing...
So he loses his leg.
I would not have been wounded. So he took an iron poker and fashioned it into a crutch. He didn't lose his leg, but it was lamed. He couldn't really walk with it.
Yeah.
So he was Lee with the iron crutch.
It's good stuff.
He, because he couldn't really walk, often would astral travel to the heavens to visit his master Lao Tzu. So this is where it gets interesting. Because the body he's in now, although crippled, is not his original body.
Mm-hmm.
So he told his disciple, Wang, that if he didn't return in 7 days to burn his body. this was a common practice. He would be like, look, if I don't come back in a week, burn me.
Yep.
During one instance of this, on the 6th day, Wang received terrible news. Wang discovered his mother was on his deathbed, and he was the eldest son. So it was his responsibility to make arrangements for that. At the end of the 6th day, because he had to leave, he decided to burn his master's body because it had never been that long before.
Yeah.
Li usually came back on the 4th or 5th day. Sometimes he'd come back in 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough spot to be in. You're stuck between two obligations, and it's hard to tell which one's the more important of the two.
So he decided, all right, I'm burning my master's body. I'm going to go. When Li came back, his body...
He did hedge his bets. He's like, well, Li's immortal.
he missed the mark.
Yeah.
You know, Li came back on the beginning of the 7th day. His body was gone. He despaired for a bit. He was now a ghost, which you don't want to be. We've now discovered when it comes in Buddhism. There's 6 realms of Buddhism. There's hell, animals, ghosts, humans, titans, and then gods.
That's right. You don't want to be the ghost. It's below the human.
And it's below human.
Bad.
Not great. So, you know, in his despair, he possessed the first body he found. It was that of a crippled man who had recently died.
Yep.
So he's still crippled. He still has an iron crutch.
God, I mean, them's the breaks, man. Like, you get a chance at a new body, and you're like, "Fuck, this guy limps too."
And he didn't blame Wang either. You know,
no, Wang was put between a rock and a hard place. That wasn't on him. He had to make a decision. So, and like I said, hedging your bets. You're like, all right, this guy's immortal. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know, mom's dead. I got to go take care of that.
Number 7, Hang Shangzi, nephew of the Confucian scholar Han Yu of the Tang dynasty. He became a Taoist. He tried to deliver his wife from Earth 3 times. 3 times he failed. His wife was not interested. The 3rd time he flew up into the sky and was never seen again. Do you know what this guy did on the 3rd attempt? Because that was what the focus of the story was.
What was the 3rd attempt?
He turned into a beggar and sat on the side of the road and begged to his wife. And his wife was like, I don't have any money. And he's like, please give me money, marry me. And she was like, I'm not going to marry you. I'm already married. And he was like, no, your husband is in heaven. Come with me to heaven so you can see him again. And she was like, no, get off of me. And started beating him with her handbag. And so he's like, you're never going to see your husband again. And flew away.
Yeah.
So not only did she have no idea what was happening, she never saw her husband again.
No. Now, see, what were the first 2 attempts, though?
I don't know. They don't discuss that. I imagine it was, you know, more rational.
Yeah.
I imagine. You know, more like, hey, there's something about me I can't tell you about.
Right. Something like that.
So, yeah, that's the story of Hang Shangzi. What do you think?
I feel like... I don't know. I mean, it seems like a no-win, you know? Because, like, she's staying faithful to her marriage by being like, no, I'm not going to marry you, you bum.
Yeah.
You know? So, I don't know why she's being punished for that.
I may be misremembering exactly how the conversation went, but I remember him, like, basically making a pass at her.
Yeah.
And her being like, no, I'm married.
Yeah, I don't. That doesn't seem like it would be punishable.
But no, the punishable thing was him telling her a true statement and her not believing him.
Yeah. He said, "I'll take you to heaven to see your husband," and she was like, "Go away."
Yeah.
But I think we all fail that test.
I mean, yeah, like why would you?
Some rando came up to me and was like, "I'll take you to heaven to see your grandpa." I'd be like, "Sir, there are institutions for people like you that can help. Do I need to call somebody?"
Right. Last Immortal 8 of the 8. Ho Shangwu, the only immortal woman of the 8. She was a peasant's daughter. She was badly mistreated by her stepmother, but she loved her stepmother anyway.
This is like a better Cinderella.
Yeah. Grandfather Du delivered her to heaven one day while she was cooking rice. She was still holding the rice spoon when she was carried up to heaven. It became her job to sweep up flowers at the southern gate of heaven.
Not a bad gig.
Yeah.
I mean, it's flowers. It probably smells nice. Every time you sweep, you get a nice new rush of fragrance. That might get sickening after a while. But I get they're flowers in heaven, though.
It's
so
heaven.
they wouldn't be. They'd be perfect flowers.
They probably would be perfect flowers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a story about the Immortal Eight here. There was a man also named Wang.
Different Wang?
Different Wang. Actually, I might be misremembering that. Could you fact check me while I tell this story?
I assume you do not have it bookmarked.
No, but it's in the index. The Immortal Eight. Or, if not the index, the table of contents. So, this guy Wang, he was a beggar. Didn't have a pound to his name. Or a penny. Or any money, really. And he wanted to become immortal. He wanted to be free of, the clutches of his Latin life. He saw, or rather he heard, and then saw, Li with the iron crutch. And then all of the other Immortal Eight go past Li, because Li's slower. He decides this is his chance. He's going to appeal to Li with the iron crutch. He prostrates himself before Li.
Yeah.
And is like, help me attain immortality. And, Li at first is like, get off.
Go away.
He's slowing him up. And so the other 7 go check on him. And they're like, what's going on? And this beggar's asking me for help to attain immortality. And their leader, what was his name? Their leader, Sheng Li Quan, decides, let's give him a chance. So they fly him off. Like immediately, they just grab him and they take him up high into the sky and fly to this, I forget what it's called, it's in there. They fly him to this holy site. It's a cliff on the easternmost shore of Japan. And they tell him, leap into the water and you will attain immortality. And then one by one, each of the Immortal Eight leaps into the water until it's only Li with the iron crutch remaining. And Li's like, all right, go on then. And he's like, I can't do that. I can't jump into the water. I can't do that. Li shakes his head.
Okay.
Gives the guy exactly as much money as he needed to get back home.
Yep. By the time he gets back, he is just as penniless and poor. So I looked it up. It never actually says the name of the man. It just refers to him as the man.
I took creative liberties by giving him a name.
Well, I like the name Wang, so that's his name. A lot of Wangs out there.
I decided, you know what? There are lots of Wangs out there. They're both going to be named Wang.
That's right. Yeah, that's... So... Now, the cliff that's in Japan, right? They flew east.
It's a specific one, and I remember you said something important about the space last time we discussed this.
Ponglai Shan.
Yeah.
The ghost mountain by the eastern sea. Yep. It's interesting that it's a ghost mountain. That makes it, otherworldly, spectral. It's a thing not of this world.
This beggar...
It being in the east...
was terrified of dying.
His morning beginning, the realm of the gods. So
I think what we're encountering here, now that Buddhism is leaving India, we're encountering less of a certain belief in reincarnation. Because the only kind of person that would kill themselves like that in an attempt to become immortal is someone that believes that even if they don't, they'll be reborn.
Well, but if we're to equate becoming an immortal with gaining enlightenment, you could also read that as an attachment to earthly things. They bring him to a cliff on the ghost mountain by the eastern sea, and they say, jump off, and you'll be one of us. But if he jumps off and he's one of them, he's no longer a part of Earth. And as we had learned in Buddhism, those desires are very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah.
So this guy said, no, I don't want to get rid of that. And what did he get?
I like my material things.
He got exactly enough to get him right back where he fucking started.
Yeah. I want to go on a little of a tangent. There's a book. It's not Swords and Sorcery, but it's so good. It's called The First 15 Lives of Harry August.
You've told me of this book before. Yeah.
I don't think it's on a retained recording. So this book is about a man, Harry August, who, when he dies, is reborn as himself. The same time, like the events of his birth play out the exact same way. But starting around 2 and ending around 5 or 6, he regains the memories of all of his past lives.
That would be traumatic.
Indeed. That's why it's not all at once, and that's why he doesn't remember any of his time from when he was a baby. It's when his body is old enough to handle it, basically. So, yeah, it's about his first 15 lives. And he talks about it in such a glib, sarcastical way because he remembers everything.
Yeah.
But it turns out there's people like him that they don't remember everything. Eventually, the human mind, there's only so much it can remember. And so there's a lot they'll remember, and sometimes there'll be like shadows of things they'll remember because, you know, it's the repetitive cycle of life.
Yeah.
As they remember it through their lifetime, because they don't get to see much more unless they find a way to really enhance their lifespan.
Yeah.
Harry August made it to 9/11 one time because he was born in the 19-teens.
I see. He would have been real old.
He says he usually dies around 67 of the same thing. He always gets the same disease that kills him.
Well, if you're genetically predisposed.
Exactly.
It's good odds. Yeah.
And so it's common that you get committed in your second life, and in your third life you seek spiritual whatever. This guy, in his third life, traveled the whole world, tried out all of the religions. Fourth life, he was still here. Decided to go into science. It's a really fascinating book because it tackles this whole idea of reincarnation and what that would look like.
Yeah.
But from a different perspective, because the reason why he didn't stick with Buddhism is because he asked the Buddhists, after he'd been there for a while, what about people reborn as themselves?
Yeah.
And it was a really fascinating discussion that, well, he summed it up. He was like, I believe several hundred years early, not several hundred years early, he said, I believe I several decades earlier spawned for the first time in Buddhism a chronological conversation about reincarnation. Because for them, time is a wheel. It's cyclical. You don't do the same wheel.
Right.
You do something similar, eons in the future.
Yeah. Well, and so there's, in these myths, we're getting, it's a mix of culture. Like Buddhism is a huge influence on it.
Indeed.
But it's not Buddhism as it's sprung out of Hinduism. It's Buddhism meets Taoism.
Yeah.
And meets Confucianism.
Yeah.
And so it's the Buddhist ideals and philosophy that clash with this philosophy of service to the group, community action, and identity. Whereas a lot of the Buddhism in India is very individualistic. The Buddhism in China becomes very community focused.
Yeah.
Where, you know, the Dharma isn't what can I do as the individual that's the most appropriate for me. It's what can I do as a member of this group that is the most appropriate for the group.
Which contrasts quite a bit from in more Indian-style Buddhism, because they believed that doing good deeds wasn't necessarily the best path.
Right.
Because if you're giving your good karma to others, you are delaying your path to enlightenment. It's certainly a very good thing, but so long as you do it, you will not attain enlightenment.
Right.
Which I find very interesting. It's like, okay, so if you want to do good, you could just stay here and just keep doing good. But like, core doctrine of Buddhism is like, you know, and I say core as in like, you know, like fundamentalist Buddhism.
Yeah.
Would be the best way to put it, from what I understand. Yeah, no, they're like, no, attain enlightenment for yourself.
I think that paints it interestingly as doing good things for others as the ultimate self-sacrifice.
It's just a different moral view.
Well, because by doing good things for others, you're intentionally putting off your own reward.
Yeah.
So you're sacrificing enlightenment for them.
And there are definitely people that would be like, nah, screw that. I'm going to do what's best for others.
Yeah.
I think maybe, if I were to speculate philosophically speaking, that is a way for people to... It's because it's still connected to one of those roots of evil, right? I think greed, possibly. Yeah. Not delusion and not hatred. So I feel like it would only have to be greed. There's something greedy about wanting to do good deeds so much for others. Because that in itself is obsessive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so then, since we're going down a philosophical route, we get into more the motive of why you're doing it. So I think if you're doing good deeds for others because it gets you to nirvana, or because it gets you to heaven, or because people will like you for it, if you're doing the good deed for the reward of the good deed, that's not good. But if you do the good deed because it is a good deed,
and you just want to do good,
just because you're like, well, it's good.
It's good
to do.
That's
what you should do. And you do it without consideration of the outcome, then that's good. Mm-hmm. And so I find that it's interesting that Buddhism sort of juxtaposes those, because it's like you can do the good thing because it's the good thing, but then you never get the ultimate good. Or you can do the thing that's good for you, and you'll eventually get the ultimate good thing for you.
Good for goodness sake.
Yeah.
And so there's a clear cultural shift once you take Buddhism to China, because they're very communal in that way. You're like, no, what's the best thing for others?
Yeah.
The people that do it that way get enlightenment.
Yeah. Well, and you see that in the Guan Yu story that we talked about, where, I mean, he makes this ritual pact with the man that's the rightful emperor, right? So he is the living symbol of authority of the state, and he's pledged himself in life and in death to it, and he becomes enlightened.
Yeah.
You know, like he dies a heroic death, becomes a ghost, not good.
No.
And then a Buddhist monk enlightens him. So he does the best thing for others, which is to help the rightful authority of the state, but, you know, by extension, the cosmos, like heaven itself. If the earthly realm is to be a mirror of it, and he is the true emperor, then he is the incarnate of the king of heaven, then that is the ultimate good. That's the best for everybody. We're going to stop the 4 other imposter factions. We're going to put the rightful emperor on the throne, and then everything will be better for everybody.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me. We were talking about... So I didn't mention in the Buddhism episode, but, like, you know, during the break when you were doing the confirmation, I mentioned to Matt and to Chris, our sound guy, I mentioned to them how there's actually a time in history when Buddhists were very warlike. Mm-hmm. Specifically in China and Japan, right, Chris? Yeah. There were some wild pictures of them. Because as I understood it, it was an aggressive defense. You know, they became a warrior. There was developed in China a warrior caste of Buddhists who existed to defend their rights to live the way they wanted to live.
Because everybody wanted to kill all the Buddhists.
They were so ethical. It offended people.
Yeah. Well, that's like, if you read into Japanese history, you know, the first domino that leads to the unification of Japan as a country is Nobunaga. Mm-hmm. And Nobunaga despised Buddhists. And he really mistreated them. I mean, it was bad. And so the Buddhists started taking up like guerrilla arms. They would go to mountain villages and incite people against him. Because they're like, he's killing us for no reason.
We're talking about Chinese culture, though.
Yeah, I know. If you want to see some warlike Buddhists, get into Japanese history. They did not play around. Although they did ultimately lose, it took massive concerted effort to do so.
Well, maybe we can get into that a little bit in the Japanese mythology episodes. I know we're going to record those immediately after this.
That's right. We're going to, for us, it'll be like 20 minutes. For you guys, a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we got anything else to talk about?
No.
See you guys.
Bye.